Good afternoon. The year is 1992. Microsoft had just dropped this bad boy, Windows 3.1. Nirvana just released Smells Like Teen Spirit. Wayne's World 1 just hit the cinemas. And maybe to a lesser pop culture reference, the first master data management system was released to the market. The idea, the concept was simple. That a company should take their most critical business or operational data and spend a meticulous focus on making this data absolutely pristine, mastered. Fast forward 30 years to today, and generally speaking, nothing has fundamentally changed in the MDM space. And it's not looking good for MDM. If you take, for example, Gartner, this year they say that 75% of these MDM projects will fail. Last year, they were saying 79%, and the year before that, it was 85%. So we are essentially getting better at sucking. This is a catastrophic percentage. Just this year, Microsoft also killed off their own master data management solution, something called Master Data Services. It's out of life, it is out of support, and there is no roadmap around it. If you take a look at the space of MDM, the average age of these vendors is 15 years old. If we take the top of the quadrant, it's closer to 20 years old. Just to put things in perspective, Microsoft Azure was announced 14 years ago. It was released 12 years ago. I guess what I'm trying to say is that if you hear the words MDM or the acronym MDM, you should run as fast as you possibly can. So, a couple of years ago, I decided I should get the most talented people in my network of engineers, enterprise people, and go off and build an MDM solution. To be more specific, an MDM solution that could help quash that horrible statistic, 75% failure rate. How many people in the room have implemented MDM? I'm sorry. How many people fundamentally know why you would even look at an MDM solution? For those of you who didn't put up your hands, I thought a good way to actually show you why MDM even exists is to take you through some of the challenges that happen when you start to bring data together from across a business. First of all, let's take data conflicts. In fact, most of the data problems that we have only start to show themselves when you start to bring data together. So you've got a John Smith in one system and a John Smith in another. You've got different email addresses. Which one's right? Both? Just one? None of them? Same goes for phone numbers. Same goes for addresses. What about the single source of truth? This is a very contentious argument right now. Right? Can it even exist? What about data quality issues that cannot be fixed by engineers? And I say this as a software engineer for 18 years. There are certain things we should not fix, cannot fix, and will not fix. What about the business? In fact, really, at the end of the day, what MDM was supposed to do was add the business layer to what is inherently quite a technical stack that we're all putting together. So how do I give my non-IT users an ability to play a role in this supply chain, this journey of data from rawness, operational system, to insight, whether that is machine learning or something like Power BI? What about catching data quality issues? There's quite irony in this, is that if we knew what bad data looked like, we could maybe code our way out of it. But there's a lot of things we can't. Duplicate data. Going back to that idea of, if I don't have these beautiful IDs that just thread themselves through all of our systems, how do I know if I've got the same John Smith? What about conflicting data models? What happens when we've got systems coming together? We've got a column called gender, a column called sex. Are they semantically the same thing? How do I align them? These are just some of the reasons why MDM actually exists in the first place. So let me talk you through what a typical traditional MDM project goes like. You start an MDM initiative. You want to fix data quality. You want to harmonize. You want to involve the business. Well, what traditionally happens is that you turn off that expensive MDM system for the first 6 months. You grab Excel, you go out to the business, and you start to plan what a customer looks like, what a product looks like, how do they relate to each other. Should we call it gender, sex, industry, or sector? And the business, after about 6 months, defines, okay, I can accept that as an operational model. Meanwhile, the MDM system hasn't even been turned on for the first 6 months. What made traditional MDM so hard was this concept of upfront complex modeling. You somehow had to figure out what your end state would look like without even bringing the data into the platform itself. You had to manually figure out how all these things fit together, and you hoped they would fit together in a standard, conformed way. And the irony of this was that majority of these projects still today are implemented and operated by IT, neglecting the whole need to add the business into this in the first place. And it felt like we were always working towards the limitations of the software as well. That MDM is only about your most critical domains. And this is the handful of domains you can pull from: customers, products, materials. But if you fast forward to today, the scope of what's important and critical for your business data is far outside of just structured data. It falls into invoices, it falls into emails, it falls into contracts that have been signed. All of these are considered critical data today. And all of this resulted in a slow time to market, a slow time to value. Because the first 6 months of all these projects, we were showing absolutely zero value. The next 6 months was somehow to fit a square peg into a round hole. How do I fit what my business wants into what the reality is? And I can tell you what happened. The rest of your business moved on. They have their own KPIs to hit, and they are also time conscious. So they could not wait 24 months, which is not abnormal in a typical MDM project, to get this mastered data. And Shadow IT came in, everyone solved it in their own space, neglecting the whole reason why you did this from a global business perspective in the first place. But there are also some signs in the market that MDM is going through a modernization. Since last year, Gartner have increased the number of calls for a modern MDM by 4x, right? The market cap in MDM has had this odd, weird blip, its biggest in 12 years. At Cluedin, a lot of this has come from building on the foundational pillars that have absolutely changed this market: cloud, agility, and automation. And to be specific in this session, I also want to talk about how Graph has fundamentally changed the way that we do MDM as businesses today. Cluedin is the recommended solution for MDM from Microsoft, which means if you are implementing on the Microsoft stack, you're looking into their MIDP, their Microsoft Intelligent Data Platform. We fit and integrate with 27 of their services, from Azure Data Factory to Synapse to Power BI to Databricks. And we're also the recommended solution to migrate off Microsoft's old MDS solution as well into a modern cloud-driven stack. I want to take you through a use case to show you the difference between modeling in the old way versus modeling with a graph. And it comes down to this core concept, something that I think was a little bit of the, if not the biggest restriction of MDM originally, which was before we even had data in our MDM system, we had to define what it would look like. We wanted our customers to have ages that were numbers. We wanted our phone numbers to look like a certain standard. And when we actually looked at reality of our data, it all became an IT problem, because our data integration pipelines would fail trying to insert a string into an integer. And this all became an IT problem. You buy MDM to add a business layer to what is inherently your technology stack. So let's take through this example. You've been given some data. You've got a date night with your wife or partner, and she says, I want a list of romantic movies starring Leonardo DiCaprio. So, you go and grab your data, actors, movies, trailers, and genres. You drag it into your favorite ETL, because I'm assuming this is what you do before date night happens. You grab out your favorite ETL tool, you drag this data in, and you do this, modeling. This is what the actor table looks like, this is what the movie table looks like, this is how they connect to each other. And this works perfectly fine for 4 tables. You blow this out to 50 tables, 200 tables, and just the thought of it becomes unscalable. So in the end, you fall back to something like a Kevin Hart movie. Sorry. You need to tell how this data is structured up front. The idea of changing this model at a later point is tricky. And you end up having this horrible date night. This is what it looks like in graph. And the core concept here is, why are we wanting upfront in my MDM platform to conform to a model? Why not do it on the way out of the MDM platform when it's had more time to be massaged and fit into some model? So let's go through the same use case with a graph approach. One of the fundamental things you'll find here is that I'm not loading 4 files in at one time. I'm just thinking about the one file, actors. I do something similar to my relational-based mapping. I drop it into a platform like Cluedin. I then identify my unique keys and foreign keys. So here we have actors. Obviously the ID column would be the unique key for the movie, sorry, for the actor. But I've got these references here to movie IDs, a table that doesn't exist, a concept that doesn't exist. And what Cluedin does in the graph off the back of this is it builds a model like this. Actors with pointers to movies that do not exist yet, where we do not know what that model will look like. And then we just continue the process for every data set, forgetting about the actors completely. We continue the same process. We drag our movies on, we flag the unique keys, we flag the references, and because we've had this pointer just waiting there in the graph, I'm a movie with this ID. When you come in, I'm waiting for you. And the process just continues and continues and continues as you grow out to these different data sets. Believe it or not, I am clicking. Dramatic click. So, we continue this process all the way through to the end. And in the end, we end up with a model that easily connects and links, which is one of the first things we're trying to actually achieve with MDM. Records merging and linking. By breaking this down and not having to so abruptly fit into a predefined model, we can have records linking and merging like you wouldn't be able to bend them into initially. So, date night's going well, and we watch Titanic or something. Actually, it's probably not going that well then. So, besides the graph, what has happened in the last few years to essentially catch up on technology for 30 years since MDM has initially been introduced as a concept? It's of probably no surprise that moving from on-premise to the cloud, moving from these big banger projects that after 2 years, then you've got your MDM model, then you've got your data out. And of course, moving more away from manual to automated tasks, whether that is with something like RPA or something more sophisticated like machine learning or natural language processing. These are some pivotal, foundational things that have happened in the market. And many of them were only introduced, like Azure, 12 years ago. These are some of the core pillars. But what does Graph bring to the conversation? Well, first of all, it brings this concept of zero upfront modeling, where instead of having to bend your data and do all that analysis up front of what it could look like in the end, you've got a model built and out into the business in a matter of weeks, not years, not months. Now, is that model what you're wanting to operate your business off? No, it isn't. But that is not the idea of this. The idea is we will have data linking and connecting to be able to easily fit into those sub-models that you might want to operate your business off. Dramatic click. What it also brings is what we call advanced deduplication. It's the ability to look at your data from a different angle. As you start to have different people, your customers existing across different systems, they all have different fingerprints, different emails, different phone numbers. They're actually the same person. And the way we traditionally solve this is with something called string distance functions. How close is Tim to Timothy? And it's a great technique, but by itself is quite naive. What the graph brings is the ability to say, how about the relationships that exist between data? Can they actually show overlap in paths? And you can trust me, if you've got the John Smith all on the same email chains, all talking to the same people, all in the same neighborhood of networks, that is a really good indication that potentially, not based off metadata, but relationships, there is some overlap here. The other thing is, because you actually don't have control over that model that's built in the first place, changing the model is not an issue at all. The flexibility that the graph has brought us is the ability to model data at a record level, not a domain level. In that every record might merge and link with other records of its own type, or cross-domain in its own unique way. This is that ultimate flexibility of not trying to bend your data to fit into something in an unnatural way. So none of this manual linking or merging. You're not prescribing how your customer connects to your products. You're literally just marking up keys and foreign keys, and the graph is wiring those pointers up. There is zero magic to that. Zero. There's no ML. There's no AI. It is 100% predictable. It's just that the data is linking and merging, maybe not like how you would have looked at the data and tried to merge that data together. Some would call this triangulation of IDs. Like me. So this record level modeling offers this immense flexibility that we're not somehow expecting all of our records and all our domains to fit into this same structure, predefined way to talk to each other. And of course, what this means in the end is that first 6 months of any MDM project where you turned it off, you've skipped it. You've completely skipped it. So getting data out and showing something to the business, that 6 months is not easier, it's not faster, you skip it completely. And it's not actually hard to see that this has happened in other industries, or at least other verticals. The data warehousing industry just went through this, where they said, trying to fit into predefined dimension tables that I can bend into fact tables, we broke that down. We broke that down and said, no, there's a different way of doing this. We store data in cheap storage, and we realize a model on a per use case basis. That's why we're building these data. This is exactly the same thing, but for MDM. And I think one of the biggest things is, this is implemented and operated by IT. Because IT have their own tools, targeted at their persona. As an engineer, I don't want an MDM system to solve my part of the supply chain. The business needs tools, however, to play a role in this. And this just hasn't traditionally happened in the MDM space. And finally, because this is a younger company, 6 years old, Cluedin, we were designed and built for the cloud. Specifically speaking, the economics of the cloud. Per second scaling, low cost storage, horizontal scaling, and of course the access to all the plethora of services that exist within that ecosystem. Your MDM system doesn't have to solve all parts of the supply chain now, and that was something that was put on the shoulders of MDM before. So then, how do you know that this is something for you to start to look into? Well, I guess one of the good reasons why you're in this session and at Big Data London is because you think something is missing. There is this void, there is this chasm that exists. That you're always that little step far away from being this data-driven company, this aspirations and ambitions that you have. And let's be honest, we've all been good citizens. We've bought cloud. We've bought BI. We've bought best-of-breed machine learning. We've got lakes, lake houses, warehouses. We've got the best people in the industry from data science and data engineers, but something still feels like it missing. Like it is missing. And so what is the solution? Well, the solution is not MDM. It is, where is the business in this entire process? Data governance, master data management, all of these pillars that make a foundation so we can actually drive insights for our teams of high quality, enriched, ready to use data. That's what's missing. Will MDM solve this for you? No. But will it play a critical role in filling part of that void? Yes, it will. So as you plan out your data landscape, always remember that the reason why MDM exists is not for IT and it's not for engineer. There are perfectly good tools on the market to help that demographic. This is about where the business is in that entire data supply chain. The year is now 2022. We are sending reusable rockets to space. We have cars that can practically drive themselves. And Elmo dropped one of the biggest bangers of a song this year about brushing your teeth. You should totally listen to it if it's, it's just good. And MDM just went through its biggest modernization in 30 years. Built on cloud, built on agility, built on automation, and built on graph. Thank you for your time. I believe I've left about 5 minutes for questions if anyone has one, but we are at booth 6:30. If you would like to come by and talk to our group. Excellent. Go for it. I don't know how I'm supposed to hear. I can't hear anything. Yeah, you can come. Yeah, sure. Sounds good. They didn't plan that side of it. It's a one-way communication, it seems. Good. Thank you, guys.